She was off limits long before the door ever clicked shut. That's what I told myself, anyway. That some lines don't need to be crossed to be understood. I worked maintenance at the hotel on Grant Street, the kind of place that tried to look timeless, but mostly just smelled like old carpet and lemon cleaner. I fixed broken lamps, jammed doors, air conditioners that rattled like they were arguing with themselves. Invisible work. People only noticed me when something went wrong. She noticed me before that. Her name was Mara. I learned it from the way the front desk staff said it. Careful, respectful, like you might say a doctor's name or a teacher's. She ran operations. Mid-40s, maybe older, but age didn't really fit her the way it fit other people. She dressed clean, not flashy. Dark slacks, soft blouses, hair usually pulled back, except when it wasn't. And those were the days everyone seemed slightly off their rhythm. The first real moment happened on a Tuesday afternoon, slow shift. I was fixing the thermostat in the back office when she stepped in behind me without announcing herself. I only knew because the room changed. Air pressure, maybe. Or instinct. You don't have to crouch like that, she said. Calm voice. Warm, but not trying to be. The panel comes off if you lift it first. I straightened too fast and hit my elbow. She didn't laugh. She just handed me a pen from her desk so I could point to the screw I was missing. That was it. That was the spark. Nothing romantic. Nothing illegal. Just the way she didn't rush me, didn't talk down, didn't fill the silence with noise. After that, we kept almost running into each other. Hallways. Storage rooms. The coffee machine that only worked if you knew which button not to press. She'd hold her mug out for sugar packets, and I'd give her two even though she only ever used one. She noticed. I know she did. She asked questions, too. Not big ones. Not the kind that corner you. Just, you always take the stairs, or, you from around here. Stuff that lingered longer than it should have. Once, when I stayed late fixing a lock on the 3rd floor, she brought me a bottle of water without saying why. Just set it next to my toolbox and left. I stood there for a second after she walked away, staring at condensation rolling down the plastic like it mattered. The electricity wasn't loud. It didn't buzz. It sat between us like a held breath. I think we both knew it. That awareness you don't look directly at. The kind you feel in pauses, when she'd ask a question and then wait a half-second longer than necessary for my answer. When I'd say something stupid and she'd tilt her head, considering me like I'd surprised her. She was off limits because she was my boss's boss. Because she wore a wedding ring sometimes and sometimes didn't. Because she knew exactly how much space to give and how much to take. The day the door locked, it wasn't dramatic. No storm outside. No raised voices. Just the two of us in her office while the rest of the hotel hummed along, unaware. I was replacing a fuse. She was standing too close, pretending to look at her phone. When she closed the door behind us, it was automatic. Habit. The click was soft. Almost polite. She froze. So did I? Neither of us said anything. She didn't turn around right away. I didn't move. The room felt smaller, like it had decided to keep a secret. She finally spoke, voice low. That thing I said earlier, about the stairs. I was wrong. I asked what she meant. She didn't answer. She just unlocked the door again and stepped aside, letting me pass first. But I still think about that moment. Not the door. Not the silence. The way she watched me walk out, like she was already wondering what it would cost if she didn't let me go. She asked me to help inventory the old storage room in the basement, the one nobody liked because the lights flickered and the air smelled faintly damp, like something forgotten on purpose. It wasn't really my job, but she phrased it carefully, like a favor she didn't want to call one. If you're busy, it can wait, she said, already turning back to her screen. I wasn't busy. Down there, the ceiling was low enough that I had to watch my head. She moved ahead of me with a small flashlight, confident but cautious, like she'd learned not to assume spaces were friendly. Her heels clicked softly against the concrete. I noticed she'd switched them for flats halfway down the stairs. Practical, quietly human. She was different with me that day. Not cold, just measured. Her sentences shorter. Her eyes checking the clipboard instead of my face. Like she'd decided something and was sticking to it with effort. I watched instead of asking. The way her fingers tightened around the pen when the light flickered. The faint crease between her brows she didn't smooth out. how she rubbed the back of her wrist with her thumb when she thought I wasn't looking. We worked in silence for a while, calling out item numbers, shelving notes. At one point she laughed, just a short sound, surprised, when I misread a label, and then stopped herself, like it had slipped out by accident. Sorry, she said quickly. Long day. That was the crack. I told her she didn't have to apologize. She nodded, but didn't look convinced. The flashlight wobbled slightly in her hand before she steadied it against a shelf. I don't sleep much, she said, not looking at me. That's what long days really mean. I didn't know what to do with that, so I just said, me neither, even though it wasn't exactly true. She glanced at me then. A real look. Tired? Yes, but open, just for a second. Like she was checking whether I'd mishandle it. I forget sometimes, she added, quieter, that I don't have to hold everything together perfectly. The lights cut out completely for a beat. Total dark. I heard her inhale sharply. Without thinking, I reached out, not to grab, just to be there. My fingers brushed the back of her hand. Skin warm. Still, she didn't pull away. When the lights came back, she stepped back quickly, clearing her throat, distance restored with practiced ease. The flashlight clicked off. Guard back up. Let's finish, she said. We did. Efficient. Controlled. Like nothing had happened. At the top of the stairs, she paused. One hand on the railing. The other flexing once, like she was shaking something off. Thank you, she said. For being patient. I told her any time. She smiled then, not the professional one. Something smaller. Almost sad. And as she walked away, slower than usual, I realized the dangerous part wasn't that she was guarded. It was that, for a moment in the dark, she hadn't been. A citywide power test shut half the hotel down early, and somehow I ended up staying late with her to make sure the backup systems behaved. No guests, no staff, just the low mechanical hum of a building pretending to sleep. We were in the conference room because it had the only working lamp. One pool of yellow light on the table. Everything else shadowed. She kicked her shoes off without comment and sat cross-legged in the chair, sleeves rolled up, hair finally loose like she'd given up on order for the night. You don't have to stay, she said, checking her phone again. It hadn't lit up in a while. I know, I said. I stayed anyway. The quiet was different this time. Not awkward. Waited. Like it expected something from us. She talked more than usual. About systems that never quite synced. About how people thought control meant rigidity. I listened, but mostly I watched the way she rubbed her temple when the screen flickered, how her voice softened when she forgot to guard it. At one point she laughed, really laughed, then stopped short. I shouldn't, she started, then waved it off. Sorry, I'm tired. You don't sound tired, I said. You sound honest. That did it. She went still. Her phone buzzed then. She glanced at it and didn't answer. Just flipped it face down like it had embarrassed her. Old habit, she said. Some things don't know when to stop calling. I didn't ask who. I didn't need to. She stood and paced once, then leaned against the table, close enough that I could smell her shampoo. Something clean, almost citrus. She looked at me like she was measuring risk. Do you ever feel, she said slowly, like you're doing everything right, and it still feels wrong? I swallowed. Every instinct told me to say something careful, neutral, professional. Instead, I said, yeah, that was the truth, and it landed between us heavier than anything else. She stepped closer, not touching, just enough that I felt the heat of her arm near mine. I didn't move. I couldn't trust myself to. Her hand brushed the edge of the table, then my knuckles. Accident, maybe. She didn't pull away. Her breath changed, small hitch, quickly controlled. The door handle rattled down the hall. Someone testing locks. Rules. Reality. She stepped back like she'd been burned. We should finish up, she said, voice steady again. Before someone gets the wrong idea. I nodded. Relief and disappointment tangled tight. As I packed up, she reached out. Not to stop me, not a touch, just close enough that I felt it. Thank you, she said, for not making this harder. I looked at her mouth. Just for a second. And for a moment, just a moment, I thought she might close the distance herself. By the fourth time, the silence had learned our names. It was early morning, too early to be called a shift, too late to be accidental. I was fixing a jammed service elevator when I heard her footsteps behind me. No clipboard this time. No phone. Just her, standing there like she'd been carrying something heavy and had finally set it down. "Can we talk?" she asked. "Not about the elevator. Not when you're done. Just talk." We stood in the narrow space between metal doors and concrete wall, the hum of the building settling. My reflection warped in the steel beside hers. She looked different in this light. Less composed. Tired in a way sleep wouldn't fix. "I need to say something," she said, then stopped. Pressed her lips together. Her hands were clasped too tightly, knuckles pale. She loosened them, then folded her arms instead. Still not comfortable. I waited. It felt important that I didn't rush her. "This, whatever this is," she said quietly, eyes not on me. "It's not nothing anymore." I felt my chest tighten. I nodded once. Didn't trust my voice. She finally looked at me then. Held my gaze longer than was safe. Longer than professional. Long enough that the air between us felt thick. "I don't know what I'm doing," she said. "I catch myself thinking about whether you'll be on shift. I hear your footsteps before I see you. That's not." She shook her head. "That's not okay." I wanted to say her name. I didn't. "You haven't done anything wrong," I said instead. It sounded too small for the moment, but it was true. "That's the problem," she replied. A sad, crooked smile. "Neither have I." And still, she trailed off. The elevator chimed somewhere above us. Life continuing, careless. I shifted my weight, hands useless at my sides. Every instinct told me to close the distance, to offer something solid. Instead, I stayed where I was. Let her choose the space. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "if some connections show up just to remind you of everything you're not supposed to want?" The question landed hard. Not accusatory. Honest. Frightened. "Yes," I said. My voice was steady, even if I wasn't. "All the time." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days. Her shoulders dropped. "Just a little. We can't keep pretending this is normal," she said. "I won't. I need to know." She stopped herself. Swallowed. Looked down at her hands. Then back up at me, eyes shining but dry. "Tell me," she said, barely above a whisper, "that I didn't imagine this." I didn't step closer. I didn't touch her. "You didn't," I said. The relief on her face hurt to see. She nodded once, like she'd expected no other answer, and was still devastated by it. Then she turned away, already pulling her armor back on. As she walked off, she said something so quiet I almost missed it. "I don't know how to want this without losing myself." The shift didn't come with a warning. It came folded inside something ordinary. She left a voicemail on the maintenance line by mistake. Or maybe not by mistake. Either way, I heard it before anyone else did. I was alone in the workshop, sorting through parts, when her name flashed on the screen. I almost didn't play it. It felt like stepping into a room I hadn't been invited into. But the phone kept vibrating, like it needed to be heard. Her voice came through soft and uneven, stripped of the calm she wore so well. She breathed, then stopped. There was a sound in the background, maybe traffic. "I can't do this again. I can't lose myself to someone who doesn't choose me." Silence. Then a quieter add-on, like she'd forgotten the line was open. "He's younger. And I hate that that matters. But it does." The voicemail cut off. I stood there longer than I should have, holding the phone like it might burn me. My chest felt hollowed out, like something had been scooped from the inside and left exposed. She hadn't said my name. She hadn't needed to. I didn't tell her I'd heard it. I told myself that was the right thing. That some truths weren't meant to be acknowledged out loud. But she changed after that. She didn't avoid me. Worse, she became gentle. Careful. She'd ask how I was. Really ask. Then step away before I could answer fully. She smiled with restraint. Distance disguised as kindness. One afternoon, she asked me to bring some files to her office. When I stepped in, she was staring at an old photograph on her desk. She didn't move to hide it. A younger version of her. Softer. Leaning into a man with dark hair and an easy grin. Her arm looped through his like she'd believed he'd always be there. "I don't usually leave that out," she said. I didn't comment on the man. I didn't ask who he was. I just waited. "He died," she said, flat and fast, like ripping off a bandage. 5 years ago. Sudden. No warning. And before that, she hesitated. Before that, he left, came back, left again. She finally looked at me. Her eyes searched my face, not for sympathy, but recognition. You remind me of who I was before all that, she said. Not him. Me. The room felt smaller. I felt older. I don't want to turn you into a mistake I keep repeating, she added, or a comfort I lean on when I shouldn't. I nodded, not because I agreed, but because I understood. She reached for the photo, slid it back into a drawer, and closed it gently, like it deserved care. As I turned to leave, she spoke again, voice barely steady. If I ask you to keep your distance, she said, will you hate me for it? I paused at the door. No, I said, but I'll notice. She closed her eyes at that, just for a second. And in that moment, I realized the danger wasn't that she was afraid of losing me. It was that she was afraid of needing me. The collapse wasn't dramatic. It didn't arrive with raised voices or tears or some moment that demanded witnesses. It happened the way real things do, slowly, in a space that had already been worn thin. It was after closing hours again. Not late, just empty. The hotel between breaths. She was sitting in the staff lounge when I walked in, shoes off, feet tucked beneath her like she'd forgotten anyone else might see her like that. The lights were dimmed to half. A mug of tea gone cold in her hands. I was hoping it'd be you, she said. Not relieved, just honest. I sat across from her, close enough that our knees almost touched. Almost. Neither of us spoke for a while. The silence felt different now, not heavy, not charged, just present, like we'd finally stopped circling it. I asked for distance, she said eventually, and I meant it. I know. And you gave it, she added, even when it cost you. I shrugged, then stopped myself. This wasn't a moment for pretending it didn't matter. She watched me closely, not searching this time, accepting. I think, she said slowly, that I confused control with safety for a long time. If I could name the rules, I thought I could avoid the hurt. I didn't interrupt. I could tell this wasn't for me to shape. And then you showed up, she continued, a faint smile touching her mouth, and didn't push. Didn't take. Didn't disappear either. She set the mug down. Her hands were steady now. I don't know what this becomes, she said, and I won't promise something I can't keep. But I know I don't want to keep pretending you're just part of the building. I let that land. Felt it settle somewhere deep and quiet. I don't need promises, I said. I just needed to know I wasn't alone in it. She exhaled, a long one, like a door opening inward. We sat there, shoulders finally touching. Not leaning, just aligned. The contact was small, almost accidental, but neither of us moved away. Her hand rested on the bench between us, palm down, waiting without asking. I placed mine next to it. Didn't take it, just close enough that our fingers brushed when she shifted. She closed her eyes. For a moment, the world narrowed to that point of contact. Skin, warmth, choice. This is us choosing carefully, she said quietly. Not a question. Yes, I said. She leaned her forehead against my shoulder. Light, trusting, the kind of gesture you don't undo. We stayed like that until the tea went completely cold and the lights hummed their reminder. When she finally pulled back, there was no regret on her face. Just resolve, gentler than armor, stronger than fear. Tomorrow, she said, standing, nothing changes on the outside. I nodded. And tonight? I asked. She looked at me for a long second. Tonight, she said, we sit here a little longer. So we did. I'm telling this from a quieter place now. Not because everything exploded or resolved into something neat, but because time did what it always does. It softened the sharp edges. It taught me what mattered about those moments instead of replaying them endlessly. People still ask what happened between us. I never know how to answer that without disappointing them. There was no scandal, no dramatic goodbye, no scene where someone got caught or chose wrong. What happened was smaller and harder to explain. We learned how to exist in the same space without pretending we were strangers. After that night in the lounge, things didn't change the way movies promise they will. She still ran the hotel. I still fixed what broke. We kept our distance in public. We didn't touch where eyes could follow. But something fundamental shifted. She laughed more. Not loudly, just without stopping herself. I stopped waiting for moments to prove something. We talked, sometimes. Real conversations. About nothing important. about everything underneath. She told me about the version of herself she used to be before loss taught her caution. I told her about how wanting less used to feel safer than wanting honestly. Neither of us tried to define what we were. That was part of the agreement. Naming things can turn them brittle. What changed most was how I carried myself. I didn't hover at doors anymore. Didn't stand outside rooms hoping for permission. I learned that wanting someone doesn't mean reaching for them. It means respecting the space they choose to give. And her. She stopped apologizing for needing rest, for choosing carefully, for letting someone see her without taking anything from her. The memory I return to isn't the almost touch or the heavy conversations. It's something simpler. Weeks later, I was leaving her office after fixing a lock. She stood by the door, watching me like she used to. Only this time, when I reached for the handle, she didn't step back. She didn't lock it either. She just said, "Drive safe," and meant more than the words. I walked out. The door closed behind me. No click that trapped us inside. No silence that demanded something. Just a soft finish. A choice made freely. That's what I learned. That love doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as restraint, as patience, as two people deciding not to take more than what can be held without breaking. We didn't ruin each other. We didn't save each other either. But we saw each other. And sometimes, that's the thing that lasts. If this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?